Welcome! Today we shall talk about dreams and fantasies, namely about the perfect The Elder Scrolls 6. This will be a video of my vision of Test 6, what I would personally like to see in the next game in the series. Note that these are not my predictions, but just how I want the game to look like. Do you have to agree with my vision? No, you don't. But you better to, because I have Nazim as my hostage. Perhaps you want literally Skyrim 2, and that's okay, because before Skyrim came out, I wanted Oblivion 2. Oblivion 2 was my dream. Will the game turn out to be like in my videos? Maybe yes and maybe no, who knows? But what is stopping us from fantasizing? So let's get started. And number one on my wish list, and I would like to talk about the most obvious thing right away. I want the game to have as few bugs as possible, and to have good optimization. Well, if you look at the launch of Starfield didn't have so many bugs in the game at the launch as even Skyrim has today. However, it should be noted that Starfield has rather poor optimization. The game requires a powerful PC, and the visual component of the game is quite mediocre, if not bad. The game looks like it was released in 2015, but the fact that Starfield had a pretty decent release shouldn't relax you, because we shouldn't forget about the release of Fallout 76. We can come to a conclusion that the scenario where Bethesda jumps full face into a pile of mud on the release of an ultra popular franchise is an absolutely real possibility. Yes, most likely there won't be such a failure as with Fallout 76, because Test 5 was literally the game that fed Bethesda all these years, with its 100 releases, and because of the purchase of Bethesda by Microsoft. But still, we cannot exclude the scenario where The Elder Scrolls 6 is released in poor technical condition, and all that remains is to ask Talos for his mercy and good technical condition of the game. So, now that we have dealt with the elephant in the room, we can move on, and I propose to go from more obvious desires to quite complex proposals and concepts. Something like an iceberg, where at first you see the tip of the iceberg, and gradually we will dive deeper into more complicated topics. Actually, this video is a remaster of my very first video, because that video had very bad audio. So because that's a remaster, there's currently 4 more videos on the channel on this topic. There will be a link to the playlist in the description, but subscribe for more. But for now, the tip of the iceberg. Number 2 on my wish list is my personal pain, the sizes of the cities in the game. The cities in Skyrim are just tiny and pathetic. They don't even look like a village, let alone a city. Even in Whiterun there are like 20 buildings. Falkreath is no bigger than Riverwood. The central city of a region is no bigger than a village near Whiterun. For example, look at Winterhold. There are literally 4 buildings. Although Bethesda has an excuse for the size of Winterhold, but for the former capital and once the largest city in Skyrim, it's just pathetic, I don't have other words. Let's not forget the fact that a village of 4 buildings cannot even function in theory. And even more so, 4 buildings doesn't need a Jarl. Of course, it is not necessary for all the cities in Test 6 to be as large as Novigrad in The Witcher 3. But at least twice as large as Whiterun would be nice. By the way, I'm not an apologist of seamless open worlds. Provided that locations load quickly, I see no problem if there will be a loading screen for a short period of time when entering a city or a building. In roleplay games, the player often interacts with the game interface anyway, so I don't think that the loading screen will greatly affect the immersion in the game world, while the interaction with a city with 4 buildings is a constant reminder that the game world is not real. However, I would like not to see a loading screen when entering a cave or a mine. In short, where there are no doors, there shouldn't be a loading screen. It just doesn't seem natural to me. Of course, with the release of Starfield, we can see some progress in Bethesda city building skills. For example, I really like Aquila City. Although it's not a very big city, Size-wise, I don't think that it is bigger than Whiterun, but the content of the city and how many buildings and details there are is impressive. The city is packed. There is also a city type like New Atlantis, a huge city, or rather a completely empty city. It is not pleasant to move around such a city, nothing catches the eye. In addition, the city is divided into many districts, so the city is not really that big. Bethesda, please don't make cities like New Atlantis. In short, the city size in Test 6 is still an issue. Guys, and before we move on, if you like this video, subscribe to the channel and check out these cool videos, like the video about Skyrim economy and Tamriel economy. For some reason, YouTube decided not to show it to anyone, to keep this video a secret. And there is a cool video about Rockstar formula, how Rockstar creates their games. But that's for later for you to check out. I'm not done with you yet. Number 3 on my list. If we have mentioned the credibility in the game world, we should also mention the NPC's dialogues. Aren't you tired of hearing about how the next guard got an arrow in the knee for the 100th time while playing Skyrim? Or how red guards have curved swords? The issue is not only the guards' phrases. The repeating dialogues are all NPC problem. I should note that in Test 4 Oblivion, dialogues were much better, at least in theory. They are framed as a rumor exchange between the townspeople and the player. It's not surprising that the same rumors are repeated many times. You can hear it in real life, so it's perceived as normal. In Skyrim, unlike in Oblivion, the lines of NPCs are designed more like... It's hard to describe, but I think it is closer to one-sided dialogue. That's why it looks like a story that is told over and over and over again. I'm not saying that this format should be completely abandoned. This problem can be solved by adding more different lines to the townspeople, and I think we should bring back the rumor exchange format for NPCs. By the way, this approach is not quite suitable for the city guards, because in Skyrim all guards share the same dialogue lines. You can hear about the Sweet Troll in Riften or Whiterun or in any other town. Of course, you can write a bunch of unique dialogues for each individual guard separately, but it will be quite difficult. Instead, they can be prescripted with lines like in Skyrim, but the pool of lines will depend on player's character level. Like every time the player reaches a new level, the list of available dialogues changes. This will eliminate the possibility of hearing about the Sweet Troll at the beginning of the game and for the next 500 hours. The player will not have the time to notice the dialogues that are repeated. And of course, the guards should be granted with more dialogues like "Greetings, Archmage" or "Something happened?" Repeating of such phrases will not raise any question for the player. They sound natural. After all, we hear greetings every day in real life, so why should it bother us in the game? Number 4 on my list is my concerns about the possible choice of province for Test 6. You've most likely seen the 2018 teaser. Of course, it was 6 years ago! Sorry, anyway. It is safe to say that at the time of the teaser release, there were hardly any real working concepts of Test 6 in Bethesda. What I'm trying to say is that analyzing the terrain from the teaser and comparing it with the map of Tamriel to figure out where the teaser place was makes little sense. Most likely the landscape in the teaser is almost 100% figment of someone from Bethesda. Most likely the place will not be in the game at all. At the same time, the validity of predictions based on the type of landscape is also questioned. By this I mean that Test 6 can take place in any province. I advise you to keep this in mind so as not to get disappointed later. However, many people predict on the basis of the teaser that the next Scrolls games will be either in the province of High Rock or Hammerfell. And I really don't want Bethesda to choose Hammerfell. Why? The answer is simple. Sand.
I don't like sand.
I don't like desert locations in games. If you've played Dragon Age Inquisition, you might know what I'm talking about. In a desert, wherever you look, there is nothing around you. Sand is boring. Even moving in a desert seems slower, because the background around you does not change. And the developers may deliberately use this to not fill the world with various activities, justifying it with the words like, "It's a desert, what did you expect to happen in the desert?" It is especially concerning with the release of Starfield, where we have hundreds of planets that are literally deserts. And I understand that not all of the Hammerfell province is a desert, but even 30% of the desert on the map is horrible. That's why I'd rather see High Rock as the province of Test 6. Number 5. Since we're talking about the possible setting of the game in Hammerfell, here's another reason why I don't want the next Scrolls game to take place in Hammerfell. I must mention the theories of the players that, like in Skyrim, in the Elder Scrolls 6, the player may be also granted with the status of the Chosen One. In Skyrim, the player was a Dragonborn, so many people, relying on the lore of the Scrolls universe, are theorizing that the main character of Test 6 can be granted with the status of the Swordsinner, and with the ability to summon spirit swords. It would be an alternative to Dragon Shouts, and I see several problems with that. The first is the very status of the chosen savior of the world. The roleplay is immediately decided for the player, which contradicts with the philosophy of the series. Like, be whatever you want to be, do whatever you want to do. For example, the player may have wanted to play the role of a super master killer, a ruthless cultist who worships cities and Boethia, and kills for pleasure. But the player is dumped with the role of the savior of the world. The second problem with the status of the Chosen One is the lack of recognition of the status of the Chosen One. It's like what happened in Skyrim. That is, the player is legendary, the last Dragonborn in 200 years, and perhaps the last in the history. He could potentially claim the throne of the Empire in those grim times. But when you try to join companions, you are literally despised by everyone and treated like trash. Also, Wilkas says that he has never heard of you and your deeds, even though at the time I had already stormed Whiterun for the Stormcloaks and had the highest rank among them. I caught a dragon in Whiterun and then flew on it to kill Alduin, the Eater of the World. The player does not have the means to demand due respect for himself, which means that the status of the Chosen One exists only in theory. But in practice you are nobody. Unlike in Test for Oblivion, where you are literally nobody until you prove otherwise. And this way the player's experience is way cooler, when you build your own character. You are a self-made man, so to speak. And finally, the ability to summon spirit swords complements the style of playing the game as a warrior, unlike in Skyrim, where shouts complemented different styles of play. For example, there was a shout to slow time, or repel foes, which complemented warriors. Shouts that disoriented NPCs and gave you the ability to see the enemies through walls, for the Thieves characters. Fire Breath, Frost Breath, summons for the mage characters. For example, in my last playthrough of Skyrim, I played as a mage who never touched a weapon and never puts any armor on. And Bethesda might destroy such a role model for the players in Test 6, if the player would be a Swordsinner. With all due respect, I don't think that Bethesda will be able to avoid a clear complementation for the warriors, if they decide to make the main character the Swordsinner. Now, that's it for today. Don't forget about the link in the description. Show this video to your grandma, so that she would also know what the perfect Test 6 looks like. Now, eat your vegetables and don't be naughty. See you later.